The thing I have is with adults, like these grown baby men who are 35 years old going, I hate that. You're 35, dude. You're 35. Like, let that sink in. People are making podcasts about this movie in their 40s about how they hate it. You're 40.
Welcome to WatchMojo's Poppin the Culture, the show that revels in all things popular culture. And I'm your host, that's right, the ever-loving Mr. Hollywood himself, Matt Demers. Today, I'll be sharing an interview with the always entertaining Jamie Kennedy. From Scream to The Son of the Mask, Jamie has a lot to say, and you're not going to want to miss it. But first, let's check out some Hollywood headlines. All right, this is the part of the show where we like to break down some of the more interesting developments out there in Hollywood. And today I've recruited, a very familiar face and voice here at WatchMojo. That's right. On MsMojo, you know her, you love her. It's Phoebe. Phoebe, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are things, by the way?
Good. Just, working from home still. It's been a while, but good.
Yeah, listen, everyone's been at home for the past, year and a half. But the good news for us movie fans is that we're now going to be able to leave our four corners because movie theaters, Phoebe, are opening up just in time for those big Hollywood blockbusters. And a lot of people were saying that the sky was falling in Hollywood for the movie theater industry. Not so fast, because the Black Widow just took in a staggering $80 million at the domestic North American box office just this past weekend. So I don't know. What says you, Phoebe? What do you think the fate of movie theaters is?
They will never die. After being at home for a year and not being able to go out to movie theaters and see movies, I think we kind of forget what that feels like and how special that experience is. And so in my personal experience, I recently went to go see A Quiet Place Part 2 in theaters. A movie that I think should be seen in theaters because of the whole audio mixing and everything. It's just a really special movie. And it really reminded me that this is for real. This is actually very important to movie watching.
It is. And if you think about it, the movie theater industry has survived so much, right? We're talking world wars. I remember when back in the day when VHS and home video DVD came out, you're like, okay, no one's going to want to go watch it in theaters, and it still survived. Cable TV, it survived. Netflix, it's still surviving. So yeah, I think I'm with you. I think it'll change a little bit. Going back to Black Widow, a lot of people did see it at home. The numbers for Disney Plus premium video on demand through that service was also quite high, where I think it was around the 60 million range. Crap. You personally, Phoebe, would you rather go to a theater, or would you rather snuggle in and watch at home?
I like having the option. I think that not every movie needs to be seen in theaters. But I like having the option of doing both, which is what I think is so interesting about specifically the Black Widow release, that you had the option to go and see it in theaters or watch it at home. I think that's nice for a lot of people. Personally, there are certain movies that you would absolutely have to watch in theaters. Like I was mentioning A Quiet Place Part 2. It's kind of the whole experience really changes the film for you. So I like both, honestly.
All right, let's get everyone excited, because with theaters opening up, we're getting back to some big blockbusters. There's some exciting stuff on the way. I asked you to pick three. I picked three. Let's start with you. Okay. I'm interested to know what Phoebe's excited for.
Okay, so the first one that I have on my list, I think the trailer dropped recently, the Many Saints of Newark.
Yes.
The Tony Soprano movie. I have not been this buzzing for a movie in a really long time. I just think, Michael Gandolfini playing his father's role is just such an amazing way to pay tribute to such an iconic character that changed, the cinema landscape and the television landscape forever, literally a pioneer in television. And so I'm really excited to see that one. I can't wait.
And the trailer looks great, by the way. I heard about it going in development. I was I wasn't 100% sure, but I'm so sold with the trailer. So if anyone hasn't seen it, definitely go check that out. Okay, What else you got?
Ray Liotta in that trailer. I was buzzing about that. But the second one that I have is Ghostbusters Afterlife. That movie has been through like development hell. It's been pushed back for so long now. I'm excited to see it. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm not like a huge fan of the whole reboot and reimagining of all these iconic properties in Hollywood. It's not my favorite thing, but Paul Rudd, I'll see anything with Paul Rudd in it.
This movie seems a bit like a love letter to the franchise too, right? Based on the directing connections, Ivan Reitman's son, Jason taking over. So I'm with you on that. Okay, and number 3, round us out.
Venom 2.
Ooh.
Venom 2. I know a lot of people didn't like the first Venom movie, and I can see its shortcomings. You know, the dialogue was pretty campy. The writing was not on point. But honestly, I loved the first one. Like, I found it such a pleasure to watch. I think Tom Hardy is really perfectly cast in that role. I'm really excited to see the second one with Woody Harrelson. Can't wait.
Yeah, Tom Hardy, no one can accuse him of playing it safe in a role.
Never, no. Have you seen Legend? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. No, that's... literally every movie Tom Hardy's in, he goes there. He goes there. Yeah, so I'm excited for those 3. And I got 3 different, and I'm interested in your takes on these. The first one I got is actually coming up pretty soon, end of this month. The Suicide Squad. What's your take on this? This is a... You said you didn't like the reboots. This is kind of a sequel/reboot kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think it's from the directors of Guardians of the Galaxy now. It just looks fun. I'm all about fun and surprises.
Me too. I think that's what I gravitate towards in terms of like, superhero movies as a whole. I think that I tend to gear towards Marvel instead of DC because I feel like they inject a lot more comedy, a lot more fun, a lot more color. Specifically, Guardians of the Galaxy is definitely like one of my favorite series in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. For that reason, it's so colorful, it's so funny. So I'm actually excited to see the Suicide Squad directed by James Gunn because I feel like we'll get those little injections of comedy and fun and lightness, which were, in my opinion, sorely lacking in the first one. And I hope they don't, I'm not exactly sure, but Jared Leto, it's not for me. I can't.
You're not alone. You're not alone. I think a lot of people will agree with you. I didn't mind the first one, but you're right. It was kind of like a Hot Topic commercial, like a overlong music video.
Edgelord.
All right, the next one I have is No Time to Die. This would be 007, James Bond, number 25 in the franchise. Daniel Craig's final, he's saying his final time wearing that tuxedo. So we'll see, but it's also got a great cast of Rami Malek in there. And this is one that I was waiting for at the beginning of the pandemic, and it kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And I'm just frothing at the mouth here. I want to see this one.
Yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also kind of, holding back that excitement a little bit, only because in the previous Bond film, if I'm not mistaken, it was the most recent one that came out with Christoph Waltz.
Yeah.
So he's like one of my favorite actors, and I was so excited to see that movie. And when I went to theaters, I thought that him as a villain was totally underutilized. Yeah. But I am anxious to see Rami Malek in that role because he's, a bit of a weirdo and like creepy. So I think it'll work.
All right. And the final one is Dune.
Oh my Dune. God, yes.
Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I don't even know what to make of this. I got to rewatch there was another movie that came out. This is all based on a book, but there was a movie, I believe, in the 80s.
David Lynch movie.
That's right. Yeah, which was so weird and so badly received. So I kind of want to rewatch that. But this new one looks great. Timothée Chalamet is in this one. And wow, just the trailer, just going off the trailer and Denis Villeneuve's, way he makes cinema. It's just so great. It's like a chef's kiss all the time.
Yeah, he's like the modern master of sci-fi films. I think we saw his chops in Blade Runner 2049. Just to speak a bit on the original Dune film, which, I'm a fan of it. I love the camp of it.
You've seen
it? Yeah, of course I've seen it. I love the camp of it. I think it's definitely a film that he's not proud of, David Lynch. He said that he kind of just doesn't consider it a part of his catalog. But I think it's super cool. I love Kyle MacLachlan, so I'm a big fan of that movie. I'm really excited to see the new Dune. Denis Villeneuve is one of my favorite filmmakers. Of course, Blade Runner 2049, but also Prisoners is one of my favorite movies with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal. So I cannot wait. I'm going to run to the theaters to see that one.
Yeah, there's just some directors that rarely miss, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of his movies, you can literally just take a screenshot at any point and just hang it on your wall as a piece of art, because they always look great. All right, I was going to skip this topic, but you kind of threatened me before we went on before we went on air. So let's cover it, because the only reason why is because I don't know a lot. We don't know a lot, but I think people are excited, and you're clearly one of them. And that is for a little franchise called The Lord of the Rings. And if you haven't heard, well, get excited, because Amazon Prime Video is going to be putting out a series. That's right. And not just any series. Why, it's the most expensive show. I think we're talking billions upon billions of dollars that have already been invested. It hasn't even appeared, but they've already got, I think, 3 to 5 seasons already lined up. What's your take? You clearly are a fan.
Yeah, so to preface this, I'm like an enormous fan of the original trilogy. The big budget kind of worries me, only because the spark and the allure of the original trilogy is that they're really, like, they're big budget, huge Hollywood blockbusters, but they also feel like really small passion projects. So if you've watched like any of the 24 hours of the behind the scenes footage of the making of the original trilogy, like I have, you'll know that, you know, they had a really dedicated team of people who were building sets, who were doing makeup on all of these extras. And it was so much love and thought put into it, versus what we missed in The Hobbit, which felt very much like a very glossy CGI version of a very short book that didn't need to be a trilogy of films. But I have high hopes, because, you know, all of these streaming services making these amazing fantasy, like The Witcher, which is something
Netflix,
with Netflix. And of course, you'd be remiss to not mention Game of Thrones, which isn't a streaming service, but HBO really just hit the nail on the head with that. So I'm anxious to see what it will look like.
Yeah, I think you're not alone. I think it'll do well. I mean, Lord of the Rings has got a built-in fan base, and I think that's why Amazon's really throwing the money at this to make it as good as it can be. When Game of Thrones left, it left a big hole, right? All those viewers didn't really know where to go. And we're trying. I mean, there's a lot of high fantasy out there. You mentioned The Witcher doing very well, Henry Cavill. But Cursed on Netflix just got canceled a couple of days ago. So if anyone was loving that, sorry to break the bad news to you. And then you mentioned Game of Thrones, and I did too. Well, we're getting all kinds of prequels to Game of Thrones. There's a bunch that are being developed. So, you know, we'll have our high fantasy, our craving satisfied, if you will. But Lord of the Rings has got a lot of people, including Phoebe, very, very excited. Okay, Phoebe, I want to know what everyone else there thinks. What are your most highly anticipated movies this summer or going in to the end of the year? Let us know in the comments. And of course, Lord of the Rings, the TV series. Are you going to be tuning in? Drop it in the comments. Phoebe, don't go anywhere, because me and you, well, we got to go beyond the list. Yeah. All right, Phoebe, here's where we go beyond a list in the WatchMojo archives. That's right, those classic top 10s. I wanted to have some fun with you today, so I got one that is a little out there, but I think, hey, I actually got some opinions on some of this. We're looking at the most awkward, gross, uncomfortable love scenes from movies. That's right. It's the top 10 most cringe-worthy love scenes in movies. Yeah, this is... It just makes me smile, because there's so many. And I think this list does a great job. And I want your thoughts as we go through it. But at the end, there's actually one that I thought definitely should have been on there.
Okay, I have some too that should have been on there as well. Yes.
Oh, you do? Just goes to show you, sometimes the lovemaking is very, very cringeworthy. Number 10 on this list was incredibly cringeworthy. I want to say kind of unintentionally funny. I think a lot of moments in this show, this movie were rather. It's Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn. It was the honeymoon, Bella and Edward.
Yeah, very, very cringy. I actually rewatched this series very recently because I was, I don't know, just craving the camp of it all. I think that like Twilight is kind of like, it's got like a lot of sexuality in it, like repressed sexuality, and I feel like that's kind of geared towards younger females, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's something that we don't see a lot, but they really let the female fans down with this really cringy, really just like scary sex scene.
Oh, yeah.
Like just really, really weird. And the scene where the part where he like breaks the bed and everything, like it's one of those movies where you have to look away because you're like, ah!
Yeah, and what's crazy is that those, at the time of this movie's filming, those two, the actors involved, were dating in real life. So the fact that they couldn't kind of capture that chemistry.
But where is the chemistry is the question, because even though they were together, like...
Yeah. Number 9. This is funny. It's from the movie The Room, and the listing is all of them. Basically, all the love scenes from this movie. Well, this movie is just cringe-tastic to begin with, but the love scenes in particular, the way they're filmed, that part where with the rose, oh man, and then there's a bare buttock scene that was just unnecessary. Yeah. Oh, what's your take on The Room?
Yeah, just like softcore porn modeled after like really cringy like 80s porn that you get on like a VHS. Like just really cringe worthy.
Absolutely. Superbad. This one's funny, but of course fits the topic of cringy. Superbad with the unfortunate puking in bed. That's right. Becca and Evan finally seem to have a moment, but no, she's incredibly intoxicated. I you know what? Sometimes the funny ones are cringy, but that one's great. I love Superbad. I actually want to rewatch that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic like teen sex film. I actually don't know that I find this scene particularly cringy. I find it more like sweet in a way, like just the way that he kind of reacts to her vomiting. It's just kind of like a sweet little moment. It's definitely cringy. I don't know if it's the cringiest thing I've ever seen, but yeah. Cringe,
but made to be cringy, of course, and they nailed it. Okay, this one cringe, but they probably weren't going for it. Showgirls. There's a love scene in the pool. This movie is NC-17. A lot of interesting elements to this one, Elizabeth Berkley. But yeah, there's a love scene in a pool that goes maybe a little too far. That actually looks like it may. I don't know if anyone got hurt in the filming of this.
No, I don't, because I've never seen this movie. But the way that you're describing it to me, I'm like, I'm gonna search it up on YouTube and watch it. No,
don't. Probably a good idea not to do that. Yeah, we'll move on to number 6, another one that makes me laugh, from Gigli. And it's, how topical is this? Because Ben Affleck, Jennifer Lopez, the stars of this film, are now back together. That's right. Nostalgia is running high out there in Hollywood. But they starred in this movie in 2003, and there's a scene on a bed. I'll just say 2 words. Gobble, gobble.
Turkey lurkey time.
That's all we need to say, folks. That's all we need to say. Cringe to the max. I think that one should have been a little higher, because that one to me. All right, let's go to another one that it's made. This one's made to be cringy, folks, but it is right up there. The 40-year-old virgin. It was almost his first time, right?
Almost.
That whole. Man, what a funny movie.
Yeah, it's so funny, and like I said about Superbad, like it's funny, but it's also sweet at the same time as being cringy. Just like the innocence of that character and the cluelessness of the character, it's really funny.
Yeah, tip of the hat to Steve Carell, who is just so great, especially in that role. All right, it brings us to number 4. I love the entry title for this. It's called Ducking with a D. That's because we're talking about Howard the Duck, 1986. There's a human on duck love scene that. Have you seen? I can't get it out. I can't get it out of my head.
Very
I've seen
disturbing.
This a long time ago. Yeah, and there's duck nudity in other parts of this movie. What a bizarre movie.
I don't know what like drug the writers or producers were on when they greenlit this movie, but good for them. all of them. The drugs.
I'm pretty sure it was all the drugs. Okay, number 3 is American Pie, the webcam, of course. Jim and Nadia, but his webcam's turned on, and it's just this really awkward cringe moment.
Another really awkward teen sex comedy that doesn't come off as sweet, just very grotesque and just very cringy.
Kind of a what not to do situation. Okay, number 2. This one's a little out there, but it is cringy because it's a animated film. And if you're wondering what cringy animated sex scene we're talking about, why it's Sausage Party. It's the food orgy.
A lot of anthropomorphic like animal and object sex on this list.
It's true. That's what. Hey, and this one incredibly cringy. They go whatever you think these food items, because that's the whole point of this movie is these food items are alive and they have feelings and whatnot. They go for it. They do not hold back in that food love scene. All right, which brings us to number one, and I could not agree more because listen, I watch all the movies. I actually do film reviews, and I just get incredibly cringe vibes anytime I have to sit through 50 Shades of Grey. The playroom stuff. I mean, for a movie that's supposed to be incredibly sexy, they just get it so wrong. It's again kind of laugh out loud. Have you seen the 50 Shades?
Yeah, I actually went on Valentine's Day to see the first one with my friends. Yeah, just like so blatantly unsexy that it's like almost a turn off to watch these two characters and these two people who have no palpable chemistry whatsoever. You know, there's like a line in one of the movies where she says something like, "You're not sticking that in my butt." And I'm like, what is this movie? What are these movies like?
Yeah. Oh yes, I had to watch one in IMAX, so I got the big picture for this 50 Shades. So there you go. That was the list. All right, which ones did you think should have made the cut or at least got an honorable mention?
So this one is kind of like an iconic scene, so I feel like it might be a bit of a controversial opinion, but the pottery scene in Ghost, just like the blatant sexual imagery is so like not nuanced. I watched it recently and I was like, I had to literally look away because I was like, oh, it's so cringy. Like,
yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to disagree. I'm going to throw out, this might seem strange to some people, but I have a slight celebrity crush on Heather Locklear.
Nice.
I know, a bit of an age discrepancy there, but she was in a movie called Swamp Thing Returns. And yes, the big Swamp Thing that you know from the DC comics and the beautiful, lovely Heather Locklear have a love scene. And how does that work exactly? Because he's a plant? Well, he gives her to eat, Phoebe. This is so strange. Kind of a leaf that's been rolled up that looks quite phallic, by the way. And after she takes it, she kind of it changes her mind and she sees him as this hunky guy. And of course, they get it on. Cringe.
Yeah, that reminds me of a scene in The Shape of Water where she and the kind of looks like a Swamp Thing have, they do the nasty. And then her friend asks her how they did it. And she just goes like this. And it's like, oh my God, it's so cringy.
Yeah, I think we might need to do a part two of this list because it looks like there's a lot of other options out there that we didn't get to. And of course, if you've got any, throw it in the comments. And if you want to watch it, that list, which is quite funny, by the way, narrated by the lovely Phoebe on MsMojo. Well, you can just click on your screen. Hey, Phoebe, thank you so much for joining us here on Poppin the Culture.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, it's time to check out my interview with the one and only Jamie Kennedy. He's an actor, a prankster, a stand-up comedian. Heck, he's had his fingerprints on popular culture for the past 3+ decades, and I can't be happier to have him join me today on WatchMojo's Poppin the Culture. Mr. Jamie Kennedy is here. Jamie, how are you?
I'm good, brother. How are you, man? Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, listen, it's my pleasure because there's a lot that I want to talk about because, like I mentioned, your career has been through a lot. Let's start with a movie. And the reason I want to start here is because the WatchMojo audience, they love them some horror. That's the genre that anytime we have like a top 10 horror movies, man, that thing just explodes. The movie that you were in was a game changer, 1996 Scream. Man, I want you to take me to that set. What was that experience like? Because you were just a young guy at that time.
Young guy. It's way longer than this interview could ever be, but I'll try to give you the cliff notes. Young, struggling actor. Got a few jobs and got my first movie, which was Romeo and Juliet.
Okay, I was going to say this was after Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, so during the filming of that, I had to come back and do my second screen test for Scream. then went back, had no idea if I was even remotely close. And my agent would call me every day and say I kept getting passed, and then passed, and then passed, and then I got the job, and then I lost the job, and then like
Wait a minute.
Another.
Hold on a second. You lost. They for Randy, you got it, but then they were like, no. Who?
I got the job. I was Wes's choice.
Yes.
Miramax at the time was making a movie with a young, hot filmmaker called Kevin Smith. And he had a movie called Mallrats, which, side note, I just did a TV show with Jason Mewes, and he told me how he got that job. And the star of Mallrats was Jason Lee. Miramax, I believe Dimension was making Mallrats, and they were making Scream, so one of their first big forays into it. And I got the job, and they were like, well, Jason Lee's a known actor. So I was told that they wanted Jason Lee, and Wes is like, I love him, but this guy, I really like this guy. And they're like, well, he has no credits. So there's a longer story to this, but Wes had to fight a lot of different battles, because at the time, he wasn't as hot as he was during Nightmare. So one of the battles was me. So then I, by the hand of Wes Craven, I got the job.
That's amazing. To have Wes Craven have your back, that's got to feel pretty good going into the movie.
Incredible. And he also almost lost the job. There's a whole story, and Skeet told it this weekend. We were at a convention about how the first week with Drew, it was like a separate movie, and they filmed all with Drew, and they had no idea. And they're like, what is this? What are we looking at? And then Wes hired an editor out of his own pocket, put all the scenes together quicker than it would have been. And then they showed the tape to the studio. And then the studio's like, oh my God, now we understand what it is. But you can't sit there and judge something after the first take. So that's all different than what you asked me, which is this was just a hodgepodge of all types of people and ideas and things and known people, unknown people. And I was just nervous, but not nervous, excited. I knew I could do it, but I was like all professional, no party, no nothing. I was like, go in, learn my lines, do my scenes, sit in my trailer, wait, go to my hotel room for 2 days, learn my lines, work out. I remember I used to eat lunch sometimes with Rose, do my scene, go home, wait. Maybe I wait one day. I think I played basketball with Skeet. But I just started learning how to socialize because I was like, I thought actors were like, you do their part and then you go to your hotel room and wait. That's how I was like kind of trained. And I think that's a good thing to do.
Well, that's good. I think the results speak for themselves. And it might sound like I'm kissing up here, but I think Randy was kind of the key to this movie, because one thing that I loved about Scream, when it was so self-aware, right? The characters kind of knew those, cliches or tropes, if you will, from the horror movie. And that all came from the character Randy. The franchise is still going, Jamie, and I'm curious to your thoughts, because there's a new movie in development. And even, I don't know if you saw this, Netflix released the Fear Street movies. The first one, I was like I was watching a remake of Scream because they borrowed so heavily. What are your thoughts on that? The Scream franchise still going? Do you think it still has steam, or has it run its course?
Wait, did you say the movie's in development? The latest Scream is completely done. It's ready to be released.
Oh, it is ready to be released.
Yeah, they posted a picture last night, actually. So it's coming out January. I don't know the exact date, but 2022.
Oh, wow.
It'll be 25 years, the anniversary. And that's done. I think Scream is its own universe. I don't think it's ever going to run its course. I think it is now like Halloween or Friday the 13th,
yeah.
but in a way it's different and like it's so impactful. Like they're so impactful, but it's like Scream's going to be a universe. I think it's going to, because people like these characters and they change them out and they have these theories, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the new Scream. I know nothing about it. and since I died a few movies ago, but you know, those
Did you
guys,
die? I guess dude really did die.
I
Randy's
died. I died a
Randy's dead.
horrible, bloody death right in front of that van
And
with just my
they zoomed
paycheck
in to
died.
yeah, they zoomed in to show the blood. So I guess your character is really gone.
I'm really gone. But the directors of the new Scream, Scream 5, those guys directed Ready or Not.
Oh,
And
okay, yeah.
that is such, there's so many levels to that movie, and it has so much, there's so much happening in that movie that, like, I can't wait to see what they've done with this movie, because they have so much, they have such the sensibility of the Scream universe. So I think it's going to reignite it like it hasn't been in a long time.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm going to be checking it out. Jamie, you talk about all this on you have a YouTube channel too, which I've been kind of obsessed with. So if people want to learn more about the behind the scenes stories and everything you just talked about, it's on.
You watch it?
I do. I love it.
That means a lot, because I try to really go deep into the transparencies of what Hollywood is, and I completely try to be honest, you know.
Oh,
and I want to really be that way, and I try not to like talk trash, but like if I don't care, I should. But that we should be able to talk trash, but not bad trash, but just like honest trash. Like, unfortunately, if you say something bad about someone in Hollywood, they get all butthurt. But it's like, you know what I'm saying.
I know exactly what you're saying, but I'll tell you what the audience loves: the behind the scenes stuff, right?
Yeah.
Even sometimes more than the actual movie. We want to know what happened on the set, what happened there, what was the vibe, who was hanging out with who. One of your videos on YouTube that I've watched, you broke it down in a couple of parts, and I don't want you to give us the whole story, because again, that would be a 2-hour deal. But it was about the son of the mask, and here at WatchMojo we do lots of top 10 lists, as you probably know. The son of the mask ends up in a lot of them, but not for the right reasons, because it's always like, sequels that didn't need to happen or things of that nature. Man, that movie is so polarizing. I remember working at a movie theater when that came out, and kids loved it. Like, honestly, when it played during matinees, the little kids would come out and watch it. But then if I worked the night shift, the adults
hated it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So what's your take? I mean, because like I said, that's such a movie that we're still talking about it all these years later. It was you. Who else was it? Alan Cumming? Was that who it was? Who played Loki?
Trailer Howard, Ben Stein.
Yeah, Stein came back.
Bob Hoskins.
Wow.
Legends.
Yeah.
Yeah, legends. Look, I can sit there and tell you that, like, I'm kind of lucky in the sense that, like, when my hits hit, they make an impact, and when my misses miss, they make an impact. You know what I mean? Like, you're still talking about this movie, 16 years later, and I think the biggest issues are a few things. It's number one is expectations. The source material of The Mask was horror.
Yeah, it was a comic. It was a very dark. Yeah.
And that's very cool. And then The Mask, which I thought had some dark undertones, but it had the whirlwind genius of Jim Carrey, and it became like a bigger than life, you could almost say superhero. You know what I mean? But it was just something we had never seen before, and with everything melding with his performance, his energy, and CGI, and it was incredible, So I think that was already built in with a lot of expectations. So then when we had the son of the mask, and I was known for doing my characters and different things on my show, The Experiment, that's really what the movie was going to be. It was going to be me doing Jamie Kennedy type scenarios like I did on my show, and each scenario is a different character, and I become that character as this mask to help. That just got lost in translation, and the baby became a bigger story, and the dog became a bigger story, and there was a lot of chefs in the kitchen, and the movie was not what we set out to make, and then so they were like, all right, let's pivot, let's make it a kids movie, which wasn't a bad pivot. But if you look at it, the director is really cinematic. Like Larry could easily direct. I don't want to say easily. I don't mean to say this, but he's competent, more than enough talent and competence to take a Marvel product, I believe, property, and direct one. Like, look at the opening shots of Son of the Mask. I mean, and if you don't believe me, James Gunn used to live in my back house. So you can look that up. So, I mean, I know Marvel directors, okay? I know a few of them. So Larry Guterman has this ability to make something very cinematic. And it, you know, it just didn't happen. It's not his fault. You know, there was a lot of chefs in the kitchen. It's very hard. So then, you know, we're not in charge. They wanted to make it more of a kids movie, the studio, and then it kind of got chopped. So then, but then the kids kind of liked it, and then Japan and overseas liked it, but it just didn't hit it, and it became a mishmash. And then the issue, and all of that is true, and everybody's feeling is, and there's a lot of behind the scenes, but the thing I have is with adults, like these grown baby men who are 35 years old going, I hate that. You're 35, dude. You're 35. Like, let that sink in. People are making podcasts about this movie in their 40s about how they hate it. You're 40. Like, you gotta let that sink in.
People have very strong feelings about that movie, and
I know, but they're 40. Don't you think that's hilarious?
It is pretty hilarious, yes. I mean, people, hey, listen, fandoms go, you know this, you go to conventions, people get dressed up, and people get pretty.
But I have to say this. I have to take those hits. And you know what? If I want the praises, which I love, I will have to take the bow and arrows. And that's only fair. So I understand.
Well, I'm going to give you a praise because there's a movie that I actually owe you a little bit, because I went on a date to see Malibu's Most Wanted, and the date went very well. And I kind of always said, hey, thanks, Jamie Kennedy. I'm not with her now, but I mean, at the time it was good. Because if it was a bad movie, who knows what would have happened. You played a character that was kind of roughly a takeoff of Eminem at the time. Did he ever talk to you about that character? Was he?
It wasn't really Eminem, but like Eminem was such, you know, he's such the god that it's like people thought there were little moments, obviously, that we knew that movie was already out. So we did a couple of like tiny satire borrows, but for the most part, we had this movie for a while before 8 Mile, but it was more about like basically suburban hip hop kids. And it was like the take of the character was like, it was a character I did in my stand up. And then I went and when I'm from Philly, and people can really go down the rabbit hole of hip hop, from Run DMC to DJ Jazzy Jeff, Fresh Prince to EPMD. We know like all types of hip hop, but we still talk like, hey, what's up, man? How are you? You got to get that new EPMD album or whatever. But when I went to LA, kids were like, yeah, what's up, son? Yeah, like talking like all like, you know, gangster, I guess is the term, and yet they were in Brentwood or like they were in Beverly Hills. That's really where I met these kids, and I like, they were what we call frontin'.
Yeah.
So then
we have them in Canada too.
You totally do, out by T-Dot. You know, I know all Thornhill. So and so you like that, I know that. So the thing is that I said, what's a funnier place? And so I made Malibu. Like, you ever seen a rapper from Malibu? And then that's how the character was born. But I guess someone did tell me this. I don't know if it's true or not, but somebody said that they heard from Eminem and he was annoyed with the character. Now, I don't know if that's true. I heard it from a pretty high-end source. I hope he wasn't. You know, it really wasn't inspired by him. It was inspired by more of dudes who front, and Eminem obviously is legit as it gets. And, you know, I really like Eminem. And also he's got a great sense of humor. I mean, Eminem to me not only, besides being a lyricist genius, he's also funny. Like, he's deeply, deeply satirical. So I would hope he would appreciate it.
I'm reminded of that MTV, I don't think it was the Movie Awards, where Borat, or Bruno came down and bare buttocks on his face. And I thought, wow, Eminem's a good
Oh
sport.
yeah, I remember that. I think that was. I don't know if that was real or not. To this day, still.
Speaking of blurring the lines between real and what's not real, the Jamie Kennedy Experience. Man, I had to look this up because I didn't know how many episodes there were, and I think the IMDb is saying 63. Man, that's a lot of episodes, and it was a big hit. This was the WB's, one of their top rated shows. Very funny stuff, and it's you doing these different pranks, kind of characters. It was almost like a, what would you say? It's like almost like a candid camera-esque hidden
I always
camera.
said it was. I always said it was Candid Camera meets SNL. Like it was like
Yes.
we put on these big elaborate skits where I was always playing a different character. People thought it was real. We filmed their reaction. It was like a 3-prong system, and it was incredible. It was like my own personal playground. I had the WB, which was Young Network, and young, president and young executives, and they were all about it. And they didn't have anything like this, so they were like, "This is crazy," and it was awesome. I mean, I've had people tell me from Comedy Central and MTV both that they watched it and like tried to copy it, and I thought that was a real honor, but it was like this little thing, and it kind of found its place in pop culture, and then it kind of, there was a lot of corporate restructuring, and that's why we got canceled, because it was like, what are we going to be? The UPN merged with the WB, became the CW, and then they became the Young Model Network.
That's right. Everyone's like ridiculously good looking when I watch that channel. But you brought up a good point that this was a big hit. Now, and I did this a couple of episodes ago where we talked about the amount of shows that are getting rebooted now with the streaming services. Like there's a lot of shows that you wouldn't think would get rebooted.
I know.
The Jamie Kennedy Experience, if someone came knocking, hey, we want to do a few episodes, would you?
It's one, I mean, unless I'm in denial, but maybe I'm in my own echo chamber, it's one that seem that people really want, they really want. People always come to me and say, well, you should do the show again. We need it right now in this time in the history and culture,
Absolutely.
But I mean, every episode I would get hollered at for something, because you would be in trouble. I would, get canceled for this character or this idea. So it should be right now, and it should take on all the things that's happening in the world, but you're asking a big ask from a corporation, because with corporations being scared if someone, farts, we disassociate ourselves with that farter. I mean, forget it.
Yeah. Well, Amazon took a chance. They did the new Borat. I mean, come on, Amazon, hook up Jamie. We all want to see it. I want to see it.
Thank you.
I mean, you're not slowing down. Your career has gone like all those big hits and everything else, but you're still very much into stand up. Are you still doing the podcast? The podcast was great too.
I'm doing my podcast. It's slowly growing. I'm doing my YouTube channel, which is I really love. I just did a movie called Last Call with Jeremy Piven and Taryn Manning, and Zach McGowan. I apologize, Zach. Bruce Dern. It's called Last Call.
Oh, wow.
That's on Amazon Prime, and I think I'm going to start another movie in September. So yeah, I mean, I'm out there. I just did this show with Jack Osborne and Jason Mewes. I can't say what it is, but it's for Discovery Plus. So I'm out there doing stuff within the normal entertainment ecosphere, then I'm doing my own stuff. So amazing. I'm trying, and I like to create my own things, because I just think it's so different now. And I think it's all about finding, look at WatchMojo. This is a really humongous channel. You guys are one of the people that inspired me, because you built up you have this huge following now. I remember watching you when you were little.
Yeah, well, listen, like we talked about at the beginning, everybody loves them some pop culture, and that's what we celebrate here on WatchMojo. And Jamie, you're a big part of that. And before we go, I just want to direct people to your YouTube channel, because, like I said, I'm obsessed. You do these behind-the-scenes stories. What was the one that you did about Hollywood?
I do a couple popular series. I do is Why Hollywood is Dying.
Yes.
So I have 3 episodes of that so far, and then I have another one called How I Got Cast. And that takes me behind the scenes.
And then you also react to certain things. Like you did this
Yeah.
video game, this video game thing.
I
Where you were,
react to some train wrecks of things I've done on my career. Like I hosted the E3 awards.
yeah, that's right.
And that's another one that makes a lot of top 10 lists of things that went wrong. It's usually in the top 5.
Yes, but now we get the behind the scenes look, which is fascinating.
Yes.
People love it. So we thank you for that, Jamie. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for helping us pop the culture.
Thank you, WatchMojo.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I once again want to thank Jamie and Phoebe for joining in on all the fun this week. And thank you for watching. Till next time, I'm Mr. Hollywood, and I've been popping the culture.